Queen Mary, the Grey Ghost, as she was once called, as she carried troops across the Atlantic Ocean during World War II at speeds fast enough that she could outrun German U-boats. I love this ship. She never disappoints. If you're looking for activity, this is where you'll find it. On our previous visit 5 years ago, the surveillance system picked up an anomaly which moved through the room and converted the infrared cameras back to broad spectrum, producing a series of lights that looked like Christmas lights, as Jan described them. The only camera unaffected was one in which I had used a piece of black tape over the infrared monitor to keep it in infrared mode. Once the anomaly pulled away from the camera units, it revealed itself to be a purpley shadow-like image. Those Christmassy lights are what the cameras picked up as that purple shadow moved over them. We captured compelling hits on the equipment while on the ghost investigation down in the boiler room. What? Whoa. Turn on the light for us, please. Physically turn on one of these lights in here. Show us that you can do it. And for the first time on an investigation, Jan had something pass over or through her which made her feel ill.
Honey, I'm not feeling good. I'm sweating.
And the surveillance captured shadow figures moving about in the bathroom while we were out of the room. The problem with this capture is that when the tape was enhanced, basically run back and forth quickly, you can see that the shadow comes from behind the camera. Basically, it's the drapes blowing, the result of a left open porthole, which we vowed not to do on this next trip. Interestingly, other investigators who saw this told us to go ahead and post it as authentic, but we won't do that. It wasn't, and we knew it wasn't. Now, we're ready for a second go. So this is the Russian submarine that's docked by the Queen Mary. Never been on it. I thought the admission was too much, and it's no longer functional. According to our guide, there was a hole that developed in the bottom because it just rusted out. You can see it's pretty rusty. And according to the locals, it's also now full of raccoons. The raccoons managed to get through the holes and they've made nests inside of it, so they've basically condemned it. Where are we going? A deck, yeah.
The hallway on the other side is more longer.
This thing is here.
That bathroom is bigger than this one, honey. That one is bigger.
They're back to back as far as the tubs are concerned.
There's a refrigerator.
Nice mirror.
Yeah.
Well, it's a queen-size bed, so they say it almost looks like a full-size bed. A lot of fluorescent lights in here. I'm sure that set the millimeter off crazy. 2 portholes, yeah. Another TV here.
Another TV.
And
Oh, we can.
that's
Can
funny.
move it like this.
You didn't touch that, did you?
No, I didn't.
Because when we came in, it was, I don't think it was all the way open. I think it was starting to open. I don't think it was all the way open when I first. So that could be our first oddity. I have to run the tape back and look at that one now. And that is exactly what I did, was run it back. Here is our initial entrance to the room just a few minutes ago. And there's that dresser, and the door is just starting to come open. I'm showing you this drawer right here. It will not stay shut. And when we came in, it was halfway open. It was only open like that much. and it won't stay shut. There's no way to get it shut. Could be our first activity. This particular room has a full-size mirror right here, which is not a mirror at all. It turns out that's a doorway into the next room, which is a mini suite, as they call it. Actually, smaller than I'd want a mini suite to be. And the catch is that the only electricity in the entire room is right here and above the television in the other room. And the electrical cables above the TV are cabled together, so if you pull one out, you have to pull them all out. There's no extension cord. So basically, this is where you have to plug everything in at. That's your cell phones, laptops, anything has to be done in this room here. That's a real drawback. There are other outlets in the bathrooms. Two separate bathrooms. This is the larger of the two. Got a tub, certainly needs to be refinished, but I do love these old gauges, turnstiles that are on the wall here, these knobs. That's what I'm going to say, is that used to bring in the salt water, the hot salt, and hot fresh, cold fresh, cold salt. Boy, that's really cool. Those go back to the time when the ship was hitting the high seas, and now the only thing you've got is this modern one right here in the center. Now up here, flushes the toilet. That's original. Well, I don't know what was in these wardrobes. I mean, you know, you open them up and they hold clothing. Got a couple of TVs in here. There's one in this room, one in the other room. And no place to run any electrical cords from. That having been said, I went about setting up and testing the equipment. Due to the lack of availability of electrical outlets, places to place the cameras was somewhat challenging. A lot of the positions showed that the cameras were cattywampus and they had to be completely redone, which was no small amount of time to do so. An hour later, and I'm still working on it, but almost done. What I wanted to make sure was that I had a camera focusing in at least one of the bathrooms so that I could see whether or not the water comes on or off, as some people claim that it does. I know it's not going to do it when we're in the room. We need to try to catch it when we're out of the room. That's one of the common paranormal complaints to all of the rooms in general. Well, the camera placement in the room now looks a whole lot better, but I did make the mistake of putting the cell sensor units too close to the cameras. Once the cameras convert into infrared mode, the IR reflects off of the unit, and it tends to wash it out so you can't tell whether it's flashing going off or not. This made it difficult for later analysis of the surveillance capture. When looking for surveillance captures while going through at 4 times speed, which is the fastest that you can do it without missing something, it's really difficult to tell whether the units were going off or not. Live and learn. That mistake will not be repeated on another investigation. Finally, a few minutes later, we're out of the room to do a little ship exploring and then on to dinner. Now the room has itself to itself. Let's take a walk. We're going to do a quickened walk here so we don't bore ourselves to death walking empty hallways. They say that you could fit the entire Titanic into the hull of the Queen Mary with room left over. The ship's large enough that at one point during World War II, she was able to carry 15,000 soldiers back and forth between here and Europe.
There's more down there?
Of course.
Jeez.
Yep. That's where our room was last time. B452, wasn't it? Yeah, I believe it was.
That's it?
I think this was the B450. No, it wasn't that one.
be 458. I think was the room we were in last time. That's 454. Yeah, that was our room. That was the one we were in last time. So it's like going home. Wow. Hallways are just as long as they ever were. So that goes down towards the stern as far as you can see. It's a long ways down there. And I think what we'll do now is just go back towards the front, back up to room B340. Their hallway fire doors, a couple of them have triggered.
Yeah, come the next day at lunch, we'd find out why.
That's where the handrailing used to be. Fell off.
We're scheduled for the ghost investigation tour this evening, so before proceeding much further, we have to go up and check in and get our ticket.
I actually have an elevator permit here. I guess they need one. These things are old. Yeah, this is different than last time we were here. Up on the promenade level, we gotta check in for this tour.
2007, overall length 294 meters.
Nice models. Bunch of them. Which one is this one here? Lusitania. Another big ship too. Yeah, Germans sunk that one, as I recall. Here's the Queen Mary. Here's the Titanic. It's like the Queen Mary is actually bigger than the Titanic was. The Long Beach skyline from the bow of the ship. Yeah. Pretty nice, Long Beach. They've done a lot to build it up over the years. Very pretty scene standing out here.
And in case you're interested, it was the Skyline City View used for Miami and Miami Vice and CSI Miami. At a little past 8 p.m. on that first evening, we returned to the room to pack as we were scheduled to take the Paranormal Investigation, given Friday through Sunday. There are many tours that you can take aboard the Queen Mary, and we took most of them this time as we did last time also. The ship's docents that give these tours change over the years, and of course some of them are better than the others. But one thing is for certain, the only tour that is absolutely worth taking is the Paranormal Investigation, where they actually have equipment with them and you're allowed to bring your own. As I packed the equipment to take along on this investigation, we get our first hits on the cell sensor units, and they were strong and came right out of nowhere. That cell sensor is set on its highest reading, and if you notice, the meter pegs out. That's 10 milligauss or higher. That's a very strong reading to occur right out of nowhere.
What's that about? Okay, well, I've got some equipment here. You want to play with it? Come on. All I'm doing is picking stuff up, unpacking it to get ready to go. Pretty strong little hit there. We're going to take some K2s. You know, bring me in one if you can. Is that right? Huh? Go on. Put it off again.
What?
Another battery. You don't like that one any better, do you, huh?
What is it?
Cell sensor. I don't know what else I can tell you. You know? You're welcome to come with us if you want.
The Queen Mary Paranormal Investigation is given only on weekends by Queen Mary Paranormal docent Matthew Schultz, who has launched his own website called paraexplorer.com. And that is where you can review all of the finds captured on these investigations.
I don't know what you're expecting in terms of tonight's tour. And yes, you can videotape me, no problem. Yeah.
Rule of thumb for ghost tours and ghost investigations: if they allow you to video, audio record, they have evidence to capture. If they don't allow it, there's nothing there in the first place. Don't waste your time and money on them.
Do you have any experienced investigators here or researchers?
As we debarked, we were told it would be a 2 to 2.5 hour investigation. 4.5 hours later, we're still going strong. This investigation was so involved that a second video had to be created that can be found on my YouTube channel site. Did I mention that this 2-hour tour actually lasted 4.5 hours? Well, for me, it was actually 5.5 because Matthew and I hobnobbed around the ship by ourselves for an hour afterwards. I didn't get back to the room until 3:30. Slept till noon, up at 1 p.m., proceeded to get something to eat, and head to the Battleship Iowa display in San Pedro.
Donut or a roll or something.
A what?
A donut or something.
Donut?
Roll something. There, did we see a store up there that on the promenade deck?
Yeah, there's a lot of store in here.
Well, after we got up there, we figured we had enough time to sit down, but we weren't sitting down very long. It appears on this trip as though someone is playing with the fire alarm call box.
What'd you do, Otto?
Well, this is fun. We don't know if this is a drill or not. They say usually that it can't actually be an actual recording. So we'll see how easily it is to evacuate the Queen Mary. Well, everybody else is lining up on the other bridge over there. All the employees are lined up in the parking lot. They have to get off too. The cooks, they're probably the ones that started the fire. Like the security guys there. Yeah, I have a feeling the security guys were the first ones off. Yeah, looks like we got the all clear. Everybody's heading back in now. Back from the Iowa, and just after nightfall, we now had a little bit of time to explore the ship on our own before we were going on a ghost and history tour later on that evening. Yeah, go on. I'm coming. The storage compartment now showed very weak activity. The front hold of the ship, where on last night's Paranormal Investigation something gave me a little nudge, kind of a little push, now showed no activity at all. Completely quiet. Now we head to room B340.
So here's the third class nursery. It's supposed to have activity in it.
Doing research on my own, I uncovered some information about room B340 and the accompanying rooms that even the investigation teams didn't know about.
And then there's another door here. Has no markings on it. Special keys, I've been told. Only operate with keys that the historians have, people who study the ship, because on the other side of this particular door was the ship's synagogue, the scroll room. And as we swing around the hallway,
this room should be a hotbed of activity, where Jews fleeing from the Third Reich prayed for family members left behind.
we come down here, right on the other side of this wall, which is where the synagogue is, we see room that is unmarked. This is room B340. This is the room that they supposedly taken offline because of activity. Actually, our tour guide says that that story was completely made up. You can see the plaques have been taken off of the doorway right here. This is room B340. This is the supposedly haunted room of the ship. Has so much activity that the hotel's not able to rent it. People have stolen the plaques from the wall here so many times that they don't replace it. They've kicked in the door. They've left toys and gimmicks. And right next to this room, and sandwiched in between the nursery on the other side of this wall right here, is what was the scroll room. Now it has the big lock on the door there. That is the synagogue. What's left of the synagogue, and used to be here. The actual Torah was removed to Reno, where it rests in a new synagogue now, and we have no idea what's in this room. We have no keys to get into it. I talked to some of the help, and they tried to get into it. They weren't able to do so. So here we are, right here. We're outside of the nursery, third class nursery, where they heard a cat go by a few times and scream, and amongst other things. And yeah, be quiet. And on the other side over here, get the camera to focus, is the synagogue. And we'll just see if we got any activity here. And we brought our brought our K2 meters with us. See if we can get anything on those. Well, I'd say we got nothing here. For it being a supposed active area. Apparently it's restricted to the rooms and not to the hallway. Well, heading down into the engine room. It's all the gauges on the wall here. The big engine room. Here the guys talking on the other side of this wall here. They're rebuilding the convention center. Now they got saws going over there, so it's not going to be quiet. Wow, those saws are loud. I don't know how we're going to be able to do an EVP session down here, but we're going to give a shot at it anyway. So here's our equipment set up right here. Got the REM pod next to the cell sensor, and the K2s are over here on a manifold on the other side. So, anybody in here? Come on down and get close to these devices. Come on down. Hey, there you go. Come on, get on back there. Get close to that. Finally got a hit on something. Got one light. One light. Get on. That's pretty weak. Get on close to it. Get right next to it. Let me know that you're here. Come on now. Come on. Get right there, man. Give me more than one light. Set it off.
Shows how quickly activity can come and go on this ship.
Get close to it. Move up next to that machine. Feel the energy of it.
Last night on the investigation, this area was hopping. At 7:40 on that second evening, we prepared to leave the room to go on a 2-hour historical ghost tour walk around the ship.
Get your key. Yes. Gotta turn this off in here.
This room is now vacant as we leave to go on this historical ghost tour. All is normal for the first 10 minutes after we leave the room, as we now fast forward to get through this 10-minute period. Ten minutes after we leave the room, one of the bathroom doors starts to gently close on its own. It makes no noise as it closes.
"50 minutes later, it closes another 6 inches. An hour and 3 minutes later, it finishes closing completely. This time, as it begins to close, there is a slight clicking sound that comes from somewhere in the room. This was odd and unusual to view, as this door has not moved on its own in the previous 2 days of surveillance. So what could cause this other than something that might be paranormal? Well, playing the devil's advocate, or the part of the true skeptic, if you go back and look, you will notice that when I first inspected the bathrooms upon check-in and turned the light on, you don't hear a fan come on. There is no fan in these bathrooms. This ship is much too old for that.
They're back to back as far as the tubs are concerned.
There is a ceiling vent, which you can see right here. Common sense would tell you that it's an exhaust vent and that it doesn't actually blow air down. I can't imagine anybody wanting to have cold air blown on them while they were taking a shower, and I never felt anything coming out of it. I know that the bathrooms sure did steam up a lot. And as I said before, when we left the room I made sure that both of the portholes were closed. So there's actually no air circulation that's going on in this room at all. So if it's not caused by air circulation, what else could it be? Well, heavens forbid, we are on a ship. Ships tend to rock back and forth because they set on a body of water. The only thing I can say about that is that the Queen Mary does sit in a special rock berm, kind of like a moat, which prevents the ship from rocking back and forth so that the customers of the hotel won't feel it. There are warnings on the gangplanks as you come onto the ship, warning that the ship will rise and fall with the tide. Basically, don't stick your toes underneath them or you're going to lose them. I can state emphatically that we never felt any side-to-side movement of the ship, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. I can't therefore state that this was paranormal activity, but neither can anybody else, given those facts, state that it wasn't. Other than this screwball door moving on its own, we got detector hits all about the room. Sometimes it woke us up, and sometimes it seemed to move from one detector to another, but none of it stayed around very long. It was much too tedious to put into this film here. If you have any equipment on a good night, you'll get hits all over the ship. You don't have to be in any particular room. Once again, on this, our revisit to the Queen Mary, we had to give her an activity level reading of high and consistent. That rating, however, is for the entire ship, not just for our room. The activity just comes and goes as it wants, floats around. One time you may find strong activity in a place like the engine room, and the next time you go down, to coin a phrase, it's completely dead. You never know. So bring your equipment, have a blast, and be sure to go on that investigative tour.